because the benefits of solving the crisis lie in the future, while the solutions must be undertaken now. Reason-based analysis has thus far proved of limited value in motivating action. The common behaviors causing the crisis, particularly the massive burning of coal and oil worldwide and the destruction and burning of forests, are ingrained in our civilization. But we know what the right course is. 2 years ago in Bali, I asked delegates and negotiators to resist the temptation to walk out in anger at the intransigence of the United States. And I said to the group gathered there, and many of you were present, that in the United States we were likely to soon have a new president who was committed to constructive engagement in this process. Even though some of you are feeling frustration at this meeting with the reluctance of the United States and some other large emitters to take bolder action, I would ask you to look at the facts. New opportunities are present. President Obama brought in a new administration. He brought a new voice and a willingness to lead on climate. President Obama's election has represented a return to the respect for science that any government should have. The United States has begun the process of regulating CO2, has already increased fuel economy standards to over 35 miles per gallon by 2016, passed a green stimulus committing more than $80 billion to the process of converting to a lower carbon economy, created the nation's first greenhouse gas reporting system, monitoring for facilities representing 85% of U.S. emissions, and those reporting obligations begin 2 weeks from now. Passed historic global warming legislation, albeit legislation that is weaker than I and many of you would like to see, but passed it through the House of Representatives and began the process of moving the legislation through the Senate. He re-engaged the international treaty process and will be personally coming here at the end of this week. Other nations have provided leadership during the period when this process has suffered difficulties, and I want to honor the fact that the European Union has long been a leader in these talks and is meeting its Kyoto obligations. In addition, just in the last week, European leaders have agreed to $10.6 billion US over the next 3 years to help developing nations adapt to climate change. And in announcing the deal, Swedish Prime Minister Fredrik Reinfeldt said that all 27 EU member nations would contribute and that the EU would do its fair share. Japan, similarly, has offered leadership during these years just past, and under its new national leadership has proposed a bold new target of a 25% reduction below 1990 levels, which contributed to the injection of new momentum behind the talks this fall. Australia passed elements of a green stimulus and a law demanding that 20% of the country's electricity come from renewable sources by 2020, matching European targets. Kevin Rudd will also be here this week. Mexico has pledged to reduce emissions to 50% of their 2002 level by 2050, including cutting 50 million tons per year between now and 2012. President Calderon has also called for a global green fund to help developing nations implement carbon reductions and has pledged that Mexico will itself contribute to that fund and not only withdraw from that fund. Other nations have begun to pledge similar financial support. Brazil, under President Lula, has put forward a bold pledge for mitigation and has put forward creative proposals on deforestation worldwide and is a leader in cellulosic ethanol. In the 90s, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland became the first countries to institute carbon taxes. First Finland, followed by Denmark in the same year, 1990, then Sweden and Norway 1 year later. As a result of these taxes, these countries have become world leaders in technology like wind power here in Denmark, carbon sequestration in Norway, biomass, next generation biomass in Sweden, and district heating in Finland and Sweden, just to mention a few. And we are all grateful that both China and India have put forward interesting and new proposals that have contributed to forward movement in these talks. We have the solutions in hand. We have the technologies that we need. As I have said many times, the missing ingredient is political will. What will be the outcome 3 days from now? The answer to that question must come from you and for those who are facing difficult decisions in the effort to find solutions for these remaining issues. There was a meeting within the last 2 days between young people who came here from the United States to advocate progress and young people who came from China for the same purpose. If you could have heard the level of agreement and the nature and degree of their enthusiasm, you would think this problem could be easily solved. Young people throughout the world feel a sense of commitment and dedication to solving this crisis. It reminds me of an experience that I had when I was 13 years old and listened to President John F. Kennedy issue a challenge in my country to land a person on the moon and bring him back safely within 10 years. I remember how many said that would be impossible and that the pledge was unwise. But 8 years and 2 months later, Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. And as he did so, there was great cheering in Mission Control in Houston, Texas. And when you look at those who were cheering there, the average age of the systems engineers was 26, which means that when they heard that pledge, their average age was 18. If we had the luxury of time to wait for the generational transition in leadership in nation after nation, there would be no doubt this problem would be solved. But we do not have the luxury of time, because the same scientific assessments that tell us of the impacts already beginning to occur also tell us that the time for action is now. Not simply because we want to get the solutions over with, but because we are in danger of losing the opportunity to reclaim a climate balance favorable to human civilization. Ladies and gentlemen,